I'm calling the meeting to order. It is 5:32 on July 22, 2020. Can we have the roll call, please?
Ricardo Diaz. Ricardo. Scott Dossett.
Here.
Mikhail Lubinsky.
I'm here.
Megan McGinty.
Megan, your microphone is off.
Daryl Price.
Here.
I see both Megan and Ricardo. Can we try them again?
Sure. Ricardo Diaz.
All right, I'm present.
Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Scott Dossett.
Here.
Mikhail Lubinsky.
Here.
Megan McGinty.
Here.
Daryl Price.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Yes.
Move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. I think on Zoom, we actually have to have a vote.
Ricardo Diaz.
Yes.
Scott Dossett.
Yes.
Mikhail Lubinsky.
Yes.
Megan McGinty.
Yes.
Daryl Price.
Yes.
Okay, and a motion to approve the minutes from the June 24, 2020 special meeting.
I'm okay with them, so I'll move for that.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
Ricardo made a motion and I seconded it.
Okay, thank you. So we need another roll call.
Ricardo Diaz.
Yes.
Scott Dossett.
Yes.
Mikhail Lubinsky.
Yes.
Megan McGinty.
Yes.
Daryl Price.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We now move to public participation, also known as public input. Before we start, just a reminder that given the number of people here, we can go for as long as 5 minutes. I do have a request, and it's not a response to any problem that we have encountered here at the CPRB, but it comes out of an awareness of how public comment has unfolded in several other city venues. And so the request is to please make an effort to stick to substantive and we want to hear from you about the issues, and please be mindful about not making ad hominem or personal attacks that I think take us away from what we want to have, which is a civil and courteous discourse space. So with that, anybody interested in public comment, go ahead and raise your hand and Jason will give you the floor.
And it looks like Tracy Chong is first up.
Okay, thank you, Tracy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi, I'm Tracy Chong, resident of Urbana. Today, I'd like to bring up a concern about the latest version of the civilian police complaint form. This is the version that city staff is now requesting residents to use.
Tracy, hold on, I'm sorry. We can stop the clock. There's a lot of feedback and it's hard. I'm not sure what we can do about it, but can other people hear it?
Yes.
Yes, but there was feedback.
So I'm
yeah.
putting myself on mute until I need to talk. Hopefully it'll make it better.
Okay, let's all do that.
Okay, is this better?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Can
Okay,
you go ahead and start over?
Okay. Hi, I'm Tracy Chong. I'm resident of Urbana. Today, I'd like to bring up a concern about the latest version of the civilian police complaint form. This is the version that city staff is now requesting residents to use. And in this version of the form, it adds the requirement stating, in order to file this complaint, you need to have been physically present when and where the alleged misconduct occurred. So this requirement seems to be another hurdle made up by, I guess it's Carol Mitten who created the form. And this requirement is not required in the ordinance. It's not stated in the ordinance. So my question is, how is it that city staff can simply make up rules for the complaint process? This problem happened before with the notary requirement. The notary requirement has now been removed, but the underlying problem still remains. To date, there has not been any meaningful explanation on why it was okay in the first place for city staff to make up that requirement, which is not in the ordinance. So during the last meeting, Carol Mitten could be seen on Zoom discussing with Urbana Police Department Representative Richard Searles as everyone was discussing issues. This is kind of disturbing. If Richard Searles wants to be part of the discussion, why is he whispering behind the scenes with Carol Mitten? Why doesn't he formally join as a participant in the discussion so that we can hear what he's saying? I'm not concerned. I'm concerned, actually. I'm very concerned, not just because of the specific issues, but because of the underlying problems. The complaint and appeal process, including the workings of this board, was and still is being directed by city staff and the Urbana Police Department, who have conflicts of interest and have not demonstrated that they value transparency and accountability. Lastly, I want to ask if CPRB members had a chance to look through the list of recommendations provided to each one of you by community members. We would really appreciate hearing feedback and comments from board members. And if you have any questions, the public is always happy to answer to and be involved in a back and forth discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Next up is Christopher.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Thanks, Chris.
Hi, my name is Christopher Hansen. I've been an Urbana resident for 18 years. I think you all probably know my name at this point because I've been substantially involved with the CPRB for about the last year or so. I'm going to just try to comment on, and I think probably the previous speaker said this very clearly, but I'll reinforce some of those statements. I think the CPRB needs to look carefully at what role do the members of the CPRB want to play, and to what extent are they going to kind of defer to the police department and city staff? And I think the public has been very clear on this, in that we don't want the police department to run things, and we want city staff to be involved in the minimal extent possible. The reason that we have a civilian review board is because there's an understanding that the residents don't entirely trust the ability of the police department and the hired city employees to make those decisions and have that overview. And that's why we have a civilian review board, to have it so that the civilians are making those decisions and having that power of review. And what we saw at the last meeting was that it doesn't really appear to be working that way. And it seems, Carol Mitten and Rich Searles are kind of running things and are kind of telling the CPRB, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're not going to do. And that is not the posture that is going to work going forward. And what's going to happen, what already has happened, is that you are losing trust with the residents of Urbana, because the reason you exist is that we kind of inherently don't really trust the police department to run things. And so what I would like to see the CPRB members do is maximize their role in everything possible, and to express what I described last meeting as skepticism toward the police department and Urbana city staff. Because if we outright trusted the staff and the police department, there'd be no reason for your board to exist in the first place, and then we can just dissolve it. But that isn't the case. And some specific examples, the notary requirement issue that was brought up, we still haven't heard a clear discussion on that. How was it possible that that was ever a requirement to begin with? And then how was it possible that we were able to eliminate that requirement without a vote? You need to dig into that. If you gloss over these issues, you'll simply lose all trust, and the board will go back into another decades-long sleep where it is not useful or trusted by the residents of Urbana. And this new physical presence requirement that Carol Mitten introduced on her new form, where did that come from? That's not in the ordinance. This idea that city staff are just going to kind of make up how this is going to work when we specifically have a civilian board because we don't trust that staff to do it for us. It's so self-destructive, and we need to talk about it. We can't just ignore it. And I could go into a lot of other specific examples, but I think there's something we could do to make these meetings better. And this is a civilian board, and I think you should want and expect a lot of public input on these issues. And I've suggested this to all of you by email about a month ago. And I think what you should do is try to have something that looks a little bit more like a conversation with the public. And I think the easiest way to accomplish that is to just go ahead and add in a second public participation session near the end of your meeting, so that the public can speak at the beginning, and we can listen to everything that you're going to present during the meeting, and then the public can speak at the end. And then if the board members want, they can comment on that. And that would look a lot more like a complete conversation rather than us, as the public, waiting a month before we get to say something about what happened at the previous meeting. And I think the residents of Urbana and the people who have spoken, loudly about the CPRB, I think we really, really, really are hungry for that kind of something that looks more like a back and forth, something that looks more like a conversation, rather than, we have no idea really what you guys are going to be talking about at this meeting. And probably some things are going to be said that the public disagrees with and might want to comment on that. And there's nothing to be lost by having, say, a second public participation session toward the end of your meeting. I think that would be nothing but extremely productive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I see Ben and then Jane.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ben, thank you.
Hi there, CPRB. Thanks for the volunteer work to do. I think it's super great that there's people who are watching out. My concern is that all of you are mayorally appointed and that I'm not sure you're given the tools to actually curtail broad police corruption if it should occur. Chris was talking about how, or Christopher Hansen was just talking about how there would be no reason to have a CPRB if the police was not corrupt or if there weren't things that we didn't trust. And I think it's actually really important to always have a check, even when the system's running well, such that if things start to fail, there's people there to correct it. My concern, however, is that this was put in place when there were clear and obvious problems, be it the traffic stop data that Daryl Cruz brought up, years and years ago, and that recently sort of published an article showing that there's still wide-scale racial differences in the broad sort of categories and profile of the people we're arresting and who we're arresting why. And it's my impression that you primarily review individual cases for conduct, but I'm concerned that there is enough evidence between our jail population and the racial disparities there, the traffic stop data, and things like that, that we already see evidence of clear systemic problems. And I'm worried that you all have not been given the tools to actually sort of curtail corruption should it occur. And I am wondering if there shouldn't be some way to sort of think about how, let's say our mayor, if there was ever a corrupt mayor and all of the CPRB members are appointed by the mayor, it's not a very effective check. So given the fact that sort of racial disparities haven't changed that much, I think it's worth having a conversation about what would make it more possible to have an effective check on racism, because I think that as volunteers, you all are doing the best you can, but I think there's been very few resources invested in you, and I think it's worth having a conversation about what resources would be most useful to a civilian board in being an effective check on racism at the city level, and on how or what tools would then be useful, like hiring and firing power of racist individuals should you get a bad review. I think that it would be really wonderful if your board had more power, and I sort of wanted to come and voice my support in y'all having more power, and to encourage a sort of broad perspective on where the system might be hindering your capacity to be very effective checks for the good of all people in the city. So thank you for your time, and have a nice day.
Thank you, Ben. Jane.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jane. There's also a little bit of feedback, but I think it's going to be okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll be brief. I just wanted to express my concern about the new form, which I'm sure you guys are probably already aware that I'm concerned, in echoing Tracy about the requirement for someone to be physically present. As I have expressed in my appeal to my complaint, which you may have already seen, but I've spoken to my attorney and she agrees with my assessment of the ambiguous nature at best of the first-hand account, which seems to imply only that it is not hearsay, which you are complaining about. I also want to echo what other people have said about the importance of independence and meaningful oversight. And I will, with that, and to encourage you to please look over the recommendations and, share your thoughts as we work towards making your efforts, which we very much appreciate, more meaningful going forward. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Are there any other, is anybody else interested in making a comment? Okay. I would like, since there were only a few, to take a few minutes and summarize what I heard and just give a very brief response to it, with understanding that I am not here speaking for the board. And of course, other board members are welcome to join in. Before I do that, I want to, announce that the CPRB now has 2 chairs. We have moved to a co-chair model. Joining me as chair will be Ricardo Diaz. And my understanding is that he hasn't yet been formally appointed, but we have spoken to the mayor and she's fully on board with us moving to a co-chair model. And so I'm looking forward to the co-leadership and both of us, and I hope all of the CPRB believes that the 2 of us together can better serve the CPRB and the community. Very quickly, I really appreciate all the feedback. We have wanted to talk about the requirement, which is not a new requirement. I understand that it's a change to the form, but the requirement for somebody to be physically present to file a complaint, my understanding is that that's not new. And it is something that I want the CPRB to have some time to discuss. And so we will do that as soon as we can get to it. Some other things, just general comments about the need for the CPRB to be active in providing oversight. And I heard some distrust of both the UPD and city staff. And I want to say that I think that the job of community oversight is independent of how much trust we have in our public officials and in our police department, because I think any good system requires good checks and balances, and I think a well-functioning board will provide those kinds of checks and balances. So I'm very much on board with that, and it's an expression of distrust on my part, just that I think that's part of what any board has to do. And I agree, Chris, that we want to maximize the CPRB's role in everything possible. And I think that our input, the feedback that I'm getting from council members and from city staff is that that kind of input is welcome. So I'm not finding any opposition so far, and I'm hoping that we can continue to mindfully expand the role of the CPRB. And I also like the idea of a second public comment portion. You know, I'd like us to, you know, have a brief conversation about it, but I like the spirit of it. There's nothing about it that I don't like. It could make our meetings a little bit longer. We'll deal with that if that becomes an issue. So yes, thank you for all the comments. And I invite any other members of the CPRB to respond to public input now if they wish to. Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for everybody's comments. Yeah, interpretation of ordinances and legal meaning and stuff like that is well beyond, you know, my scope. But I would just refer people to section 19-28 of the ordinance. It's Division 2, titled Complaint Procedures, Investigation, and Mediation. And note that on bullet C, a complaint shall be a sworn statement attesting to the truthfulness of the allegations made. I can assure you that during the introductory meetings when we were hammering out this more than a decade ago, that there were many of us that didn't like the notarization requirement either. But that's the way that sworn statement was interpreted by both city legal, city HRO staff, and eventually with a significant amount of discussion by the rest of the board, the CPRB. And right below that, point D, is this other area of quite contention about the firsthand account, either by a person involved in the incident or a witness to the incident. And so I think moving forward, we can talk about flexibility in those issues, but we have been taken to task for the interpretation of our own ordinance. And I think that we are at least complying with the spirit of what's there with the current complaint procedure that we have and the firsthand account procedure. So that's all I have.
Any other member of the CPRB want to respond? Yeah, I see Ricardo and then Megan.
Megan also.
Yes.
Just a quick one. One of the things I've learned over the last month is that it takes effort, not only of us volunteers, but you resident volunteers. And so I'm thankful for your presence, for your comments. And as we incorporate the double check that we didn't miss anything. I've read the petition quite a bit, and I hope that as we roll out, we can systemically go through the points or incorporate them into responses, because I think it took a lot of effort for that group to put it together. It's not the only group that's been giving us feedback, so it for me is roll it up into more. So, but I guess my acknowledgement is one on the effort. And two, I'm recognizing that we are also volunteers and we're working through this as regular residents. And actually, I'm going to ask everybody, we keep talking about Citizens Police Review Board, but we represent and we're trying to bridge with all residents of Urbana, or anyone who would get arrested in Urbana. Coming from immigration, Citizen has a particularly loaded an exclusive meaning. Everyone who's not a citizen in Urbana is still very much recognized in this group.
The CPRB stands for Civilian Police Review Board, not
Yeah,
citizen.
there you go. Not citizen, but often when we talk, we're talking about citizens' responsibilities and whatever else. The Constitution is not that narrow either. So,
yeah, thank you, Ricardo. Megan, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just really quick. Again, I as well really appreciate the amount of effort that has gone into both the petition that was written and the time that individuals in our community have spent coming to these meetings and formulating ideas and helping with checks and balances. It's really important. I would also like to add that we are just, Michaela and I have talked about this. We would really like community input on how we can reach out to those. It's great that you are all here, but we really need to reach out to those people who really probably do have an opinion but are not being heard, and either are working too much, they have kids at home, ideas on how we can further do outreach with our community. And I would really appreciate any input from anybody. Please feel free to email me. I've reached out to individuals within the community so far that are kind of stakeholders in my neighborhood and in neighborhoods where the families that whose children I teach live. So if you have any suggestions, any ideas of questions we should be asking the community, where and how we can meet with the community at this time during the COVID situation, I think we'd all really appreciate it. And again, I personally very much appreciate it and would love to hear from you.
Thank you. Okay.
Daryl, you're muted.
Daryl, you're muted. Hold on, I'll unmute. There you go.
Yes, I would like to address the subject of public comment. I too am in favor of more public comment rather than less at the end of the meeting, as long as the time factor is kept in account and that everyone that wants a chance to speak has an equal amount of time. And I guess is the subject. Everybody that has had comments up to this point has done a very good job, I believe. I think also that the chairman has, under the ordinance, discretion to extend that time if he so chooses. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. Okay, moving to unfinished business. Carol, will you please update us on the status of the board's training?
Sure, I will. Can I just go back and address something that Megan said just a minute ago in her comments about community engagement? And I think I had mentioned at the last meeting that the team that's working on the comprehensive plan is developing some more more robust community engagement tools, because we want to be able to reach some disparate groups that don't normally participate and give people a chance to participate, maybe not necessarily in real time, but when they're available to. So if you like, at an upcoming meeting, I can invite that team. There can be more of a conversation about how they might be able to assist in whatever efforts you'd like their help with. So I just wanted to mention that, and I'm happy to coordinate a visit with them. Okay, so for the status of the training, the one thing I want to start off with, just to clarify, is I've been using the word that we're rebooting the CPRB, and that's getting everybody sort of on the same level, at the same place, making sure everyone has been exposed to the same material and so forth. But it really wasn't intended to invalidate anything that's come before. I mean, there's a lot of training that people have undertaken, and people have participated in the Citizens Police Academy. People have taken NACOL seminars and webinars and courses and so forth. And so there's actually a wealth of experience and training that's already gone on. It's just trying to get a level set, you know, to move forward and give everyone confidence that everyone's on the same page. So just wanted to start with that. We did take the package to the council for approval at the not this past Monday, but the Monday before, and they approved the whole package, and they made a few changes. But what I'd like to start off with is we had done a taped version, a video version of the orientation training, and my understanding is that everybody has taken that now. I believe that everybody checked in with Vasilia, so that's taken care of, and we're good to go there. We had submitted an outline for training that I believe all of you probably saw in advance, and there were a few changes that were made to that training as the council was deliberating and so forth. And I'll just point out, I might not get every last change that was made, but they asked for some additional training, and so I created a different session, called it Conflict Resolution and Cultural Sensitivity, that would have conflict resolution, some training on restorative practices, bias-based policing and racial profiling would be a session, and then community and cultural awareness. And there was some commentary about the ride-alongs, and particularly because of the COVID situation, but also because some people felt that maybe that wasn't an experience everyone was interested in, that there could be an alternative to the ride-along if the CPRB, that would be approved by the CPRB for people instead of a ride-along. And then they also wanted to be sure that each year there was anti-bias training. I had originally put that in the optional category, but that's now part of the ongoing requirement, which I think is very healthy. So that's the highlight, and that's been posted. The approved, the ordinance or the resolution, and then the approved training is posted on the CPRB website. And then I believe that we have Mike Schlosser from PTI available on July 29th to do a training session. That would be a special meeting of the CPRB. And I just want to make sure before we advertise that everyone is available. So I got a thumbs up from Scott and Megan and Mikhail and Ricardo. Oh, Daryl's available. Ricardo, are you available on the 29th?
So that's a week from today at the same time as, yeah. Okay.
And it would be on Zoom.
Yeah, so I'm looking because I was not available. I didn't want to say that, but let me see if I changed. I'd like to add some comments on the training too, because it's in context, but I'll come back to that. 29th.
We plan to have a special meeting during that time, so it should actually be available for all of us.
Yeah. I do have 3 to 4, but yeah, I have a conflict 5:30 to 6. So I'm still trying to resolve it, but it's a yes. Maybe later I will.
Well, there may be a few items of business that we might take up in advance. I don't know what your preference would be, or if we just have that training as the sole topic. So you may be able to catch up quickly. So, okay, we're good for the 29th. That's helpful. Thank you.
I want to say a little bit, Carol, about how that training protocol was originally designed, in part because of public input, expressing concern that staff were running things. And I also actually received questions about this from council members. So Ricardo and I, as co-chairs, were involved in discussion and meetings designing the protocol. That's part of the process. Another part of the process is that we pulled from best practices developed by NACOL, the governing organization of CPRBs, And so, again, we're not, you know, we don't have to create the new wheel. We can adapt what other CPRBs have found to be useful. And then, of course, we also had some input from Scott at one point, and then council members weighed in. So there were a variety of times when members of the community reached out to me and probably to other members of the board to let us know what they expected. And one of those things, in fact, was some kind of training in regard to implicit bias. So I feel pretty good about the collaborative process that produced the training protocol. I think it's a good one. I'm glad that it's already on the website. And Carol, can we post that orientation video to the website as well?
I don't know if it's linked yet to the website. We'll make sure it is, but it is available on YouTube. And I mentioned at the council meeting how people could get to it, but we'll make sure it's linked on the CPRB website.
Good, thank you.
You notice we don't have a chat option on these meetings. Is that for a particular reason? Because we could drop it in right now.
The reason is because this is a webinar, and I think the webinar doesn't have a chat function, something like that.
So it's a technical reason, not a principled reason.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we can look into it. But it's on YouTube, and
You got muted, Ricardo. Still muted.
so it's a search on YouTube right now.
Okay, Civilian Police Review Board, July 9th, 2020.
Excellent.
Okay.
That was one of my questions on this. You know, is it open? Its openness. We haven't dealt with this topic out in a public meeting, so I think this is the time to comment on at least procedure of it. The content itself, I have questions, but I can put those aside. Is that okay to ask and to bring forward now?
Yes.
Okay. I really enjoyed the video. It's one of the part of our trainings. I don't feel like I needed it in the sense of we've been through this before in several ways. So as part of my training, it was great, as you said, as Carol said, as a reboot, but most of this information has been given to us at one time or another. But the thing that concerned me after watching this one, it is very much timed in some of the ways it talks. So how are we dealing, or what's our procedure to update? Are we putting addendums and just make a list? Are we actually making edits, you know, and replacing only certain parts of the video? I say this because not only are some of the comments in the training very, very well and time sensitive, but I deal a lot with translation versions, and we always have to have a way to refer to which one counts, which is the last version and which is, I'm concerned about that, especially in the impact of new people. Right now we have 2 new people coming on. The video will be great for them because it's still timely, but 6 months from now, new people, new context, some of this stuff is gonna feel dated. So I just feel like we need to put some kind of decision-making on the updates and the requirements for a new person as far as the training, including the video. And I know it's more work, but if we decide now, we build it into whatever. And then I have, darn it, I'd made so many notes for today, I didn't. Anyway, the rest, it looks like are comments about internal stuff in the training that I'd like to have a session at some point in which the people that spoke, or we can submit question or something to have an FAQ related to this training video.
Yeah.
And it probably would be great to just have it on, you know, on the YouTube video itself. YouTube
Yeah.
allows comments, so.
We can develop an FAQ. The video, my understanding is in some ways a response to the unique situation posed by COVID, in which it's just more challenging for us to attend any kind of in-person event. So, but also to deal with the reality that different CPRB members will be coming on, and it's just more efficient to be able to send them a video than to bring 5 different people in front of them. But absolutely, we can have an FAQ, and we can we can add to it as questions arise. And of course, if any of the if the Open Meetings Act is revised in some ways, if some of the other things are revised, then we'll need to update the video for sure.
I really like the option of having somewhere where we're actually collecting feedback. This is a training for us. We're a very small group representative in some way of being appointed to the board, but most of this stuff is very handy for regular people in the community. So as much as we can post, the better we all are educated. And of course, you got to be a little bit nerdy to get into this kind of stuff, but I think I have friends that are very qualified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the YouTube page itself, people can comment for sure. Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Mikkel. I was a little confused, and I sent to staff a query during Mr. Simon's presentation on the training video. He seemed to come pretty close to requiring the Open Meetings Act training that's available through the Secretary of State's website. And I tried to enter that training and do it. And I appeared to need some kind of a key to the highway that I couldn't find. And so I put in a request to HRO and haven't heard anything back about that. Of course, several of us did OMA training just this year or late last year with the prior city clerk. So I don't know whether the feeling is that that would be redundant or not, but I was just going to see what was there and give it a shot, and it's something he highly recommended. So that's still kind of an open question to me. Beyond that, I submitted just a couple of comments about the training to staff. And so I think I'll just kind of read through that real quickly. One of them was, I thought we were on a track to kind of have the HRO and the CPRB kind of co-triage complaints. And that's a big discussion item.
Hold on to that one, Scott, because it is on the agenda somewhere.
Okay. The other thing I noted during the training video is that the time limits for police review of complaints weren't listed. And as much as people are interested in quick turnaround, there are some numbers that we could use from the ordinance just so that people are being trained, are aware of some 7-day cuts for delivery internally, and then kind of a 45-day cut to get back. The other thing about the video that I think could be confused by a citizen or by board member is that we need to note the language that we use about sustain and not sustain for the resolution of the complaints. And that wasn't clear to me in the video. Essentially, we just need to make sure everyone understands that when the board sustains, it means that we're okaying the report from the chief. So those reporting, there are 3 or 4, maybe 5 categories we use: mediated, sustained, non-sustained, just kind of how those work. The other thing I was hoping that he might do, but I understand why he didn't, but I think it's again worth mentioning, and we'll probably do this a little bit later. Simons did not address at all the conflicts between the CPRB ordinance and the PODA FOP contract that we have. Maybe not so germane in a training video, but as we're starting to get people up to speed, I think we need to kind of open up about that and make sure that people understand that we have there's some creative, hopefully creative tension between some of those things that are going on. So that's what I have.
This is new for me, Scott. My understanding is that the ordinance, as it is written, was written so that it would not be in conflict with anything in the union contract.
Yeah, that's not the case. The ordinance was written, and then FOP got involved with it, and it's substantially about whether or not we have independent investigative power. This is sourced for me back to rendering between the prior city attorney and Todd Rent, who I still thank for doing some really good setup on this board back in the day. That conflict exists to the point that at least the last time I looked at our website, the CPRB website literally said a board with investigatory possibility or power.
It uses a language of subpoena power.
Subpoena power, right.
And that is inaccurate as far as I understand, and the website should be revised.
Right. Yes.
But
Yeah.
however, if I can squeeze in, I think the mayor in her welcome and as part of our agenda, but she lays it out and says, her exact words said, "We welcome recommendations to City Council for changes."
Yeah.
We're in that period where structural changes are being suggested, collected, analyzed, and put forward. So that means for me a reconsideration of stuff from before, and not to exclude it, but especially not to lose it in our notes, so that when we come to that stage of discussion, you know, along with the petition ones that are also there, that we can classify them and see which ones are easy, which ones are easy and immediate, and which ones have to go through, you know, a tougher grinding process because it involves the legalities, right? So I'm hopeful. That's why I didn't want to get into the comments yet, but I think we do need to have in the agenda a revisit of the training content so that we can put it out and accumulate it. Have one place in which we put in as much as possible and then shape it. Because right now, you know, I know what it's like to pull together a video. It just takes so much work. And then to have ifs on it, just it's might as well do it while we're at it and then leave a good track. So anyway, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments about the training? I have one more, Carol, and that is, as you work to put together what I think is called the technical part of the training, there are parts of it that will clearly need to be done by law enforcement personnel. And, you know, obviously going through the police use of force policy is something that we want to be done by police officers. And I think Mike Slosser is the right person to do that for us. There are other aspects of the training that, you know, for example, the bit about implicit bias that I want to make sure that we're on the same page about in terms of that should not come from the police department, right? That should come from community, you know, people in the community who have expertise in those content areas, and in some cases, possibly from the board itself. but definitely not from the UPD. Yes?
Well, as we go forward, we'll identify possible instructors or, people who can deliver content, and you can weigh in on the options that we develop. And if if there are people that you want to exclude because of their background, you can do it at that time.
Okay.
All right.
I also, one of the sections that you mentioned a few minutes ago is for me very critical. As much as we're learning how the police and the law work, we ought to teach each other how the community works and how our outreach is systematically paced forward. And that, I would imagine, goes beyond having a guest speaker, but actually, I don't know, the churches, the associations, the groups that are out there that are organized voices need to have a place. The scattered approach is welcomed, but not enough for us to get training on. I say it because my circles tend to be with 3 or 4, groups in the community very strongly, and everybody else very loosely. And so I would welcome the opportunity to be involved and to hear the voices of those organized groups.
I would welcome any suggestions about who might be a good speaker or a good panel to assemble. We have a lot to get through on the technical side between now and the end of the year, so any help would be most appreciated. Thank you.
I will include a couple of names and maybe at least objectives for that part of the training, and then to circulate until we can better it.
Great.
Okay, thank you. We now move to Scott Dossett's report to council about taser use, which board members have had a chance to review in the last few days. I guess, are there questions or comments that board members want to make before we move to a vote to approve the report? Scott, you're muted.
May I take a couple of minutes to summarize for?
Yes, please.
A reminder and a thanks that this task came to us. This is not my report. This is a report from the board that I drafted because Assistant Chief Searles noted that in the kind of enabling ordinance for taser use, acquisition and use in Urbana, we owed this report to the council. So thanks to Deputy Chief Searles for that. And in addition to that, thanks to the HRO staff that include Vasilia Clark, Todd Rent, Monique Williams, and Preston Williams for their dedication. I believe this board has worked hard to review, comment upon, and seek updates to documentation and policy where warranted during the course of these reviews. They've been intense, kind of us on 1 or 2 representatives of the police department kind of sessions, all guided by an order of proceedings, which should be publicly available, which actually have us come into a meeting and go into what is more or less a special meeting inside the CPRB meeting, although I may be misusing a phrase or two, to actually go through a systematic approach to the review of all the materials that we get, which includes initial police report forms, supplemental forms, taser usage forms, which we helped develop, taser cams, squad cams, and that kind of stuff. And so at the end of that review process, I guess what I want people to know is that this group not only had the chance, but was essentially forced into a position of saying, okay, do you think that taser use was legitimate in these cases? And so every time we went through that process and then came back to the standard meeting. We've got well over the number of 40 I count now. but that's the number of use incidences that I tallied as I was beginning this report back in January. So I apologize for any differences between my number and Deputy Chief Searles as we approach City Council with this report. They're probably my errors. So in terms of the strengths of the program, I want to note that
Scott, really quick, I just want to make sure that we're all clear. There are 40 instances of displays.
Displays, yes.
Yes, and there were...
And 3 discharges in
Okay.
the data that I am looking at, right?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted that to be part of the public record.
Yes, right. The majority of the displays, that's identified as just unholstering the taser and turning it on, as opposed to discharge, which is literally where you try to you pull the trigger, basically. In the majority of those displays, persons involved easily recognize the device or respond immediately to a verbal warning about the taser displays. And I think this is the best case, what we, those of us that were advocates had hoped to happen. In very few cases, and only with most belligerent persons, does the taser seem to further agitate them. So the taser itself, being unholstered and turned on, didn't seem to cause people to freak out. We had 3 discharges. 2 of these were immediately effective, and one had to be followed by what the law enforcement parlance is a drive stun, which means that only 1 probe attached, and so the unit that is in the officer's hand now has to be placed against the body to complete the circuit. In no cases during our review did the use of the taser, so display or discharge, result in a further escalation of the incident or the use of deadly force. Okay. We learned a lot about the situational attributes of an individual police officers as they respond to these potentially harmful actions. We heard verbally and occasionally saw something besides 2 red flashing dots on the ground, and could see that it's a common practice. Calming tactics are used and help to contribute to nonviolent conclusions. I think we have a pretty full picture of routine taser implementation at this point in time. In 2018, a secure portal was provided by the city so that we could have access to all of this stuff, and it was no longer sort of you had to show up at the meeting or come to the building. In general, police representatives are always very patient with our questions. We haven't been through any scenario training specifically on the use of the tasers, but we've interacted with the shooting simulator at ILEAS, and I think it helped most of us that were kind of in the brain about how tasers work to absorb that information. Several times during the reviews, we had suggestions regarding how the usage log was filled out and how there were a few minor inconsistencies or illogical kind of entries. I summarize, in fact, we concur that it's been comfortable with the department taser tactics as a direct result of this 100% review. On the weakness side, these reviews are pretty tedious and require a lot of time, including staff time on video redaction. My hat's off to whoever does that, because essentially they may be taking a crowd of 15 people in a room and wiping out faces on everyone on this running video. And when you pair that with the fact that we don't get much usable video, I think we're happy that body-worn cameras should eliminate some of this concern. Further work needs to be done to update the policy as related to the introduction of body cameras, and further development of the use of body camera images may require more thought and action. Initial reactions to body cams and how they deal into this are very positive. Because of this 100% review process, I think we can say that TASER usage is fair, reasonable, and effective. TASER displays only have been used several times to gain control of situations in a non-violent manner, and very rare discharges, very rare discharges have been effective deterrents and judiciously applied. This hopefully leads to a smaller number of injuries to both the perpetrator and the police officer. Recommendations include continue the review of TASER discharges as planned. And here we have some work to do because of the board's decision not to review displays, but just discharges. This means that we need to edit some pertinent documents, including the CPRB Policy and Procedures Manual, which currently doesn't say anything about tasers. And we need to probably look at the ordinance, because the ordinance, although you can, I mean, as I stated in the context of the in-person and sworn statement arguments, you can massage these in your mind. I think we need to be upfront with the ordinance in the context of displays and discharges. And right now the ordinance really says display most of the time. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to kind of put forward as a review, so that anybody who's interested in listening out there can really be confident that we've used due diligence in these reviews for the past, I don't know, 4 years or 5 years, however many reviews it is. So.
It's been a while, Scott. This is probably the only section that I've been here through, and I was against tasers to begin with. And so to be here years later, analyzing, you know, or looking at the summary that represents the board's involvement, thank you, because it was a lot. But as we've sat through these, I remember writing and trying to put, I think in the spirit of the public's comments, be very thorough as to reviewing the police usage. I think the chief at the time had given instruction, write it all in, but we need them. And it was all written in as caveats, as checks. And to see this result, I hope it helped that we were so tight. But what I really like is that the practices are showing that they haven't been misused, that they have had a result in certain situations that previously would have been resolved with the police using their guns, because the baton wasn't working, the pepper spray wasn't working, as far as I understood, especially then, was, wow, the alternative is shooting. So I'm very happy that we worked on an alternative, we caged the alternative, and the summary provides that something worked. So thank you for going through all that work. Just one clarification, and I know it's the beginning of the report, but police is providing their own summary, and this gets attached to that summary. So what is the process of making public the full summary?
I guess it will become part of the record of the city council. My understanding is that at some point in time, a representative of the board and Deputy Chief Searles will give a presentation to the city council.
Okay.
We haven't talked about when or how that's going to work out. Well, we have, but it always keeps on getting pushed back because of delays in review and stuff like that.
I'm just happy that it's a positive report. And I still think at some point, like any other tool, we might have a very, very unhappy situation. But we're a few years into it, and it's, you know, very few usages is really good news.
Any other comments or questions in regard to the report? Okay, is there a motion to approve the report? Remember to unmute yourselves.
I will move to approve Mr. Dawson's report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Ricardo Diaz,
Ricardo.
Ricardo,
I'll unmute
Here,
him.
sorry.
There
It's
we
just
go.
that I had to move and get. So sorry, get me back.
Okay,
My connection's still there?
Ricardo Diaz,
Yes, definitely.
Scott Dossett,
Yes.
Mikhail Levinsky,
yes.
Megan McGinty,
Excuse me, yes.
Daryl Price,
Yes.
Okay, the report is approved, and is there a second part that we're going to hear from Rich Searles, or is that not happening now?
Oh, I think we should try to get him to talk to us. That's not on the agenda, but we should ask him.
Can you all see me?
Yep.
Can you guys see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Scotty, first of all, thank you for helping me with this report. Much appreciated. I do have a companion report that goes along with Mr. Dossett's report. Essentially what it says is, during the course of CPRB discussions regarding the use of TASER, it was discovered that the city was not compliant with its own ordinance, in that we owed a progress report basically after 12 months, and that was due in February of 2016. That was multiple police chiefs ago. I don't know why it got forgotten. I asked around. There's a couple people that said they sort of vaguely remember something, but nobody could find a written document. So we said, let's just go ahead and write it. Let's get it done, and let's come into compliance with the ordinance. My report has got some basic stats. It describes the process by which we review the incidents. It discusses the history of sort of how we get to the discovery of not having compliance with the ordinance. And then, of course, we get into the sort of SWOT analysis that Scotty did, the strengths, the weaknesses, et cetera. I delineate a couple strengths, a couple weaknesses, the effectiveness, and the recommendation. Essentially, my report is almost identical to Mr. Dossett's. We don't really have any difference of opinion in terms of the strengths, the weaknesses, or the effectiveness of the program. So the plan is once Mr. Dossett's report is approved, that we'll go ahead and get on the agenda for City Council, and hopefully Mr. Dossett and I can, I guess, six feet apart and present it together at the same time. But we're going to get this taken care of in fairly short order. We just need to get it on the city agenda now.
And now that the report has been approved, can we put it on the CPRB website so that the public has access? Rich, you're muted.
That's a Carol question, no?
It should be a Carol question.
Sorry, could you repeat it?
Yeah, no problem. Can we post the TASER report on the CPRB website, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to see what Rich has. I haven't seen his report.
Yeah,
So-
can we post that too, or do we need to wait for council to approve it?
I think we can post it.
Okay.
We'll take care of that.
Okay. Okay. Next item on unfinished business. So I expect this to go quickly. We already had a discussion last month. We couldn't vote because we wanted to make sure we had the training lined up. So we all agreed to move the frequency of CPRB regular meetings from quarterly to monthly. Can we get a vote and a roll call, please?
Ricardo Diaz,
Yes.
Scott Dossett,
Yes.
Mikhail Levinsky,
Yes.
Megan McGinty,
Yes.
Daryl Price,
Yes.
Okay. I see that there's a bullet point there to available dates for pending hearings. Yeah, we have a lot of appeals waiting in the queue for us. So let's get that scheduled. And I know the city has to line up. I don't remember the name of the title that this person has, but some kind of
Hearing officer.
thank you, Carol. So I don't know if we can come up with dates like right here in the moment, but to the degree that we can, let's see if we can get that scheduled.
Can I suggest, as we get to those details, we just moved to monthly meetings, and it would, I think that the next monthly meeting would be a week from today. Is that what we just agreed?
No, the next monthly meeting would be a month from now. It
Okay.
would be this right now. We're in a monthly meeting. We're not in a special meeting.
Okay. So because it used to take quite a bit of work for everyone to align schedules and whatever else, can I suggest that we look for an opportunity to have business meeting, whatever it is, half an hour, whatever, and try to do at least one of hearings every time we have a regular meeting. I know that we may need extraordinary ones, especially with the backlog, but I'd like to combine it so that it is my regular commitment to know that if I'm going to do an evening with CPRB, that it includes more, because trying to fit CPRB in my book, becomes an issue of saying, oh, you know what, I went 2 hours last week and put 2 more hours right now. So anyway, I think I don't know how you guys' view on this is, but I'd like to make it systematic and then invite both resources in terms of timing, Zoom, whatever is required to make it, to have it be legit, and the hearing officers too, because as I understand from the city perspective, they have a short list of as legal was put forward, that needs to be present when something happens. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm drawing from the training. And if there's a legal requirement for the people involved, then they should know that we have regular dates in which, they should be offered so that we can keep moving, rather than trying to round this up at too many special times.
Oh, what I can say is we'll do our best to do what you just suggested, Ricardo. That makes perfect sense. But there's a lot of moving parts, as you suggested. We have the hearing officer to consider. We have the appellant's schedule to consider as well. And then we have the availability of staff because we have to host not only the public part, but we have to host a private session. And so that means multiple hosts and so forth.
Yeah.
So lots of logistics, but your point is well taken, and we will work on that as best we can. I think what the best thing for us right now, we have a list of dates. We're working on availability of the hearing officer, and then we'll just have to do a doodle poll with the board members as well as the appellants to see what we can sort of, get the stars to align as best we can.
Yeah, because you also need the police person there. I mean,
Right.
We've had one at every time, so that
Right.
person has to be assigned. So for me, the slots are created, and let's see how many people we can match before we suggest alternatives.
Okay,
Alternate slots.
I think in the long term, this could be viable. I think in the short term, we need to do something to get through the backlog. I'd like to propose this. We've sort of set aside next week as a potential special meeting, and we started today to talk about Mike Slosser doing the use of force training for us. But I think that's less urgent right now. I would propose that we meet next week to, I don't think we can do all the appeals, but I think we can make some categories, and I'd like to see us have an appeal hearing next week if we can.
Yeah, actually, that deals with our Scott and I were working on a case audit. In 2019, we have 9 total people making complaints. In 2020, we had 8 total people who had complaints in. Then from there, the number is reduced further as to how many appealed. So if we could consolidate and pick these dates and start aligning people, we could also consolidate the complaints that any particular appellant might have. That way, that relevant person isn't called on to come several times. They would also, put them all together. And I realize that not all of them would lend themselves well to that, but I think that the number of people related matches then the slots that we might have. So yes, for next week.
Can I just ask, is it going to be feasible to get all of this able to be done in a week's time?
That's a good question. I would want to meet with the co-chairs to find out which appeals do you want to hear on that evening, and then what all is involved, how many different members of the police department do we have to have present. I don't even know if the hearing officer is available that night. So I think we need to just talk logistics perhaps tomorrow.
That would be fine with me, especially because once we have a hearing officer, then surely one of the complainants would be available for that night. That is, availability, immediacy would help us move forward on the list that we have. So yeah, I'm good for tomorrow, Mikhail.
Okay.
Oh, before I forget, I'm glad now we're saying Megan rather than Megan. I just like real names to be used. We're using all first names, which is great, but if we're gonna only use one name, it ought to be the right one. So it's Megan. Mikhail, you say it?
Mikhail.
Mikhail, that's his name. We always have trouble with the spelling there. Mikhail, that's your name. Thank you. Anybody else? Megan.
Could I also ask, should we perhaps wait for the training with Mike, now I'm going to have trouble with the pronunciation of the name, Schlosser, until the 2 new board members are on, so that we all have the same training?
It will be recorded, but that's absolutely a valid point. I don't know how quickly we'll fill the entire board out. So we'll just try to manage through that. And in any event, we won't waste the 29th.
Okay. So, yes, Scott.
Well, just a quick comment. I mean, I understand the concerns about the backlog, but I also want to make certain that the appellant is treated fairly and gently in these processes. So, hopefully we can make everything line up. We're behind partly because of our own doing, and so I don't want to have the feeling of rushing through this, because some of the issues that the appeals bring up really kind of go to the foundation of the work that we do. So I just want to have us make sure that we exercise caution and make sure we don't get in too big a hurry. And I'm a too big of a hurry guy. So this is I'm telling you. So okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any other concerns about us investigating the possibility of having an appeals hearing next week? Okay. All right. So we'll work, Ricardo and I will work with Carol to see if we can make that happen. Okay, there are some revisions to the police complaint form that we talked about last month, including the removal of the notary. So I think, there's a simplified language, and then of course there's some additional language in regard to a sworn affidavit. So let's open that up for any further discussion now that we've had a chance to also hear some community input and see what we want to do with these forms.
Can I just give a little bit of a little bit more introduction? I did want to say that I think initially when we met last time, we had intended that the form wouldn't go live until we had gotten all the input, and Mikhail had asked that we post it as it was and continue to receive information. So I wanted to say that you know it's not a finished product at the moment. Scott in particular had given us some additional suggestions about language, and we made the most recent one, which is that you can turn in the form on the first floor in the clerk's office. But some of the additional language I just want to share. Even though you're using simple words, adding language in and of itself takes the form to a higher reading level. You know, we're targeting I believe 8th grade reading level. And so when we added that additional language, it took us above that. So we curtailed. And so I just wanted you to know that it wasn't that we ignored some of your suggestions, but in the spirit of keeping it at the targeted reading level, we didn't include everything that had been suggested. And then I really would like an explicit conversation from the board members about this language that people are taking issue with in the attestation about being physically present. And I had talked to, I distinctly remember talking to at least 3 of you about what does the firsthand account mean. And I believe I called this out as something that had been explicitly included in the attestation at the meeting, last meeting when we introduced this. So it's important to me because it's being suggested that this is somehow staff manipulating the will of the board, and I believe that we were simply reflecting the will of the board in the attestation. So I would like to get some specific feedback about that for the benefit of the public.
Go ahead, Scott.
More important than the will of the board is the language of the ordinance. I mean, the ordinance is the thing upon which all good and bad things happen. And I don't know. I mean, it can be changed, but
it can be changed.
There yet. An ordinance changing is a complex process in the city of Urbana. And again, I'll just note that 1928 D says verbatim, complaints shall be based upon a first-hand account, either by the person involved in the incident or a witness to the incident, except that a minor shall be represented by a parent or guardian in all matters pertaining to the complaint. So I don't see any wiggle room there. And frankly, I'm a little bit, my mind kind of goes kerplow if I imagine a scenario where a complaint may be filed by anyone viewing video evidence. The amount of individual complaints that could arise out of the Aaliyah Lewis situation from, was it the 10th of June? Could have a massive impact on our throughput. And I just want to be that blunt about it. In my mind, the ordinance is clear, and it basically means that you have got skin in the game to make this complaint. It can't be a secondary, or I heard this, or I saw this on a video. The reason we are here is to respond to citizen concerns about the actions of an Urbana police officer on them personally. What happens to me, or anybody walking around on the street that wishes to file a complaint. Now, I understand that there's a lot in the preamble of this ordinance that talks about community relations and stuff like that, and I believe we could do a lot better with that. But in my mind, the complaint process is predicated on the fact that you, as an individual, feel as if you have been wronged by a sworn officer of this department. I don't find, with all due respect, I don't find, I have no traction for secondary source complaints.
I think the community wants some kind of avenue in which a highly public event can be put in front of the CPRB, even if the specific person who was even though the people who were physically present do not want to file a complaint, because there's video and because of its public nature, there seems to be a desire, which I also share, for the CPRB to be able to review what happened. So I think the language of the ordinance here is pretty clear. I guess the only part that's a little bit fuzzy is, I think some people have argued that watching a video constitutes a firsthand account. But apart from that, I think we can address the need by possibly having the board be able to initiate its own, like for us to say, we want to be able to review this particular incident. And then that can be, then members of the public can communicate to us and can support us in identifying incidents that maybe need to be reviewed without them needing to, or 30 different people submitting a complaint. So I'm just putting it out there. I haven't had a chance to completely think through this, but I wonder if that might be a workable solution to what I think is very much a legitimate need.
And I agree completely, Mikkel, but I think that resides outside the domain of the complaint.
It would be outside the domain of the complaint.
Yeah.
It's relevant here in that I'm suggesting another avenue through which, through which we can do the thing that I think the public wants us to do.
Mikhail?
Yeah.
Are you foreseeing that the board would issue the complaint in this instance that you're talking about?
Yeah, we wouldn't issue a complaint. Because maybe we can call it that. Maybe we can call it something else. But we would essentially identify an incident that we would ask either the police chief to investigate, or if it's something that is, maybe it makes sense for the city to hire an independent investigator for Leah Lewis, right? So if it's at that level, then we can recommend to city council that an independent investigator is retained. But for most cases, it would be the same kind of process that would be triggered by a civilian complaint. We would just be the ones asking for that investigation.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I just didn't want us to get into, excuse me, the physician having to review our own complaint.
No.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Well, it would be essentially that, right? We would ask the chief to investigate a situation, and that would yield some kind of findings letter as per usual policy. And and whatever data were used to compile that findings letter. And then we would have access to that, and we would be able to review that the way we would review any complaint.
So let me try this out. In the spirit of what Scott said, let's use the ordinance. And to take your suggestion and Daryl's concern there, if we look at the ordinance under section 1939, I think paragraph A and B give us quite a bit of room. I'll read them for you because it's such a pain, but I think a suggestion could come through this. The CPRB shall work with the Police Department, Human Relations Office, and Human Relations Commission to anticipate and prevent problems, including analyzing data and making recommendations to the police department about issues requiring special attention. B, the CPRB is empowered to periodically study and issue reports to the corporate authorities about police, community relations, racial profiling, and other issues which relate to community climate. Could be argued, Scott, that when something is noteworthy enough to have several people out in the community calling us, that's a special or other issues which relate to community climate. And therefore, we don't need to change, we just need to structure it in such a way that when we collect this information, we are fulfilling that spirit that Mikhail just said. But more importantly, right now, there is very little recourse to provide this input. We take public meetings or we write individually, but as a regular person, it's my complaint about public meetings in general in this city, but relates to state law. We don't have a back and forth enough. And because of that, we end up with rising feelings up and down and comments that we could easily handle in dialogue. And in this case, because we have the authority within, we can structure how do we collect this input to better community climate. And not that I want to go crazy, but I think that we establish a channel that would be helpful to all if we took some of these feelings and aired them in a public setting, which we have purview over. Because it's frustrating to go to city council. There's too many issues. I mean, they've got 5 items and one of them, a subsection of one relates to what I want to talk about. So in our area, we have a very specialized opportunity. And in that light, may I suggest that the suggestion that was made earlier to have a double public input, that's within our purview of rules. And if we're open to it, I'd like to just make a motion that we hang on to the 10 attendees. 2 of them were press. Yeah, 2 of them are press. We have 8 people that are willing to sit here through it. They have something to say. We ought to have, I want to move, but I don't want to do it yet without the chair, that we provide a period either at the end or at a particular time. And we air out some of that because I'd like to leave the room with a feeling of dialogue, however it might be and however much it might hurt. But I think given the constructive intro, we would have constructive feedback too. So.
Agreed.
So, Mikhail, I'm just trying to envision what you are seeing. Would these be, we have a series of complaints about a given incident, so we call a special meeting, make certain that the individuals involved are directly invited to provide input? What are you thinking here?
So right now, the way the process works is, the police department may have its own internal, but as far as the public is concerned, and something is investigated if there's a formal complaint filed. We've been talking about some restrictions on who and when can a complaint be filed based on whether the person is physically there. And I'm saying, okay, if there is something that happens that the CPRB becomes aware of, even if a complaint is not filed by a person who is physically there, I'm suggesting that that the CPRB can press the same button and recommend to the chief that that incident be investigated through the same means that it would be investigated if there were a complaint, and for the result of that investigation to be made available to the CPRB.
And so then we would make the recommendation, and then after he is investigated, we would come back together.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying, I think I understand what you're saying. It's just, I am wondering, with everything else we have going on, when, and I mean, would we set aside a certain, I don't know, make sure that we call a special meeting for this, or I'm just kind of wondering how this is kind of, there's a lot there. I'm just wondering how to do it.
I mean, it's not clear to me how often we would avail ourselves of making such a recommendation. Ideally, it would be an unusual situation. But I think in some ways, all of us want the CPRB to be able to respond to something like what happened with Aaliyah Lewis. And it seemed like everybody had their hands tied because, so I'm satisfied with, at the moment, with the city hiring an independent investigator. And I assume that when the results of that investigation are completed and there's a report and a findings letter that's similar to an internal police investigation, there will be an opportunity for somebody to appeal that finding to the CPRB if they want to. So I'm imagining something like this, but not necessarily at the level of an independent investigator. Just something that we can press the button and I think if we're pressing it 3 times a week, then something is wrong. But it seems important for us to have a venue where an incident can be investigated and put in front of the CPRB, even if nobody who was physically present is available or willing to file a complaint.
So Mikhail, I think you're talking about an individual complaint, and that's where we started the conversation. I'm at the point though where it could be argued that I am affected as a normal resident on Main Street by X situation, and it really does matter for climate. And I'm thinking right now, we used to, at this board, look at the numbers of the traffic stops and the racial leaning on those numbers. We never did anything about it. I don't remember why, but I remember considering the numbers because they were reported as part of our meetings. And so that to me is a topic that doesn't get aired anywhere else, at least to inform people of where the numbers really are. If you're lucky, you read the newspaper or you catch that little section of council, but it's never been consolidated into a place of discussion. I believe we have, as board members, nothing to hide when it comes to our role. And I have appreciated that the public members have taken that into account, seeing us as volunteers too that are trying to do our best. I think we ought to look for the same, both in staff and in police. If the numbers say something, we should analyze it. There may not be an answer, but somewhere in there, and this is in that I see our purview. Scott probably does not agree because we've had conversations of this sort. But if I see it in the ordinance and he doesn't see it in the ordinance, it's a matter of vote. We're just a democratically 50+1, right? And we do our best. And I'm willing to shut up when I lose too. Watching you, Scott.
I think this is important. I meant to bring this to, and I still mean to bring this to this body. You know, I've been talking to Daryl. I'm familiar with the traffic stop data. I think the CPRB is an appropriate body to monitor those data and see if there are things that can be done at the UPD to get rid of the racial discrepancy outcomes. I do want to say that those discrepancies are not unique to Urbana. They exist in Champaign, they exist with the university police, but more importantly, they exist, and I've reviewed the statewide data, they exist in every single police precinct that I'm aware of that has any kind of meaningful racial diversity. So the only places where we don't see the racial disparity in traffic stop data is essentially in all white communities or, you know, all Black or all Latino communities. So it's a problem. I think we ought to be working on it, and it's by no means unique to Urbana. Scott.
Couple of things. I would refer you guys to the June 29th email I sent you about the materials I got from NACOL about critical, or what they call sentinel events. Take a look at this before you go too far down this path, because this can get to be a really complicated and multidisciplinary endeavor. I'm not saying that to dissuade us from doing it. It's just to say that if you take, and we might as well use the Aaliyah Lewis event to, you know, as a way to discuss, we've probably got, my estimation is 5 to 6 hours of video, both pedestrian, bystander, squad, and body cam. All of those people have the opportunity to be legally represented in any kind of discussion that might happen about them, wherein names and events get recognized. Much has been made about the fact that she was kind of outed, as it were, by UPD policy or UPD reporting of that event. And so, you know, please take a look at that stuff from Tucson and from the University of Pennsylvania, because I think it helped me kind of organize my thoughts about this stuff. The other thing, of course, is the hard stop. And I have to admit that early on, we really didn't debate this very much. I probably don't have the legal chops to attempt that. And that is the prohibition against criminal or civil case action related to events. I don't know what the source of that is, but several times in our ordinance, for example, if we are in the middle of a case, Section 1937 talks about suspension of proceedings, and one of those is about civil action. So I don't know how we get around that in this new rubric. You and I both, Mikkel, kind of fought not to cancel that April the 22nd meeting. And the sole reason that we both fought not to cancel that meeting was about the very thing you are talking about and bringing to us now. So that has a deep resonance with me. And I think it's something that we should continue to consider and try to develop some kind of a scenario, given, you know, all the feedback that we've got since then. But I suspect there's you know, it's going to be a hurdle race for sure. There's not a smooth glide path to do this. So anyway, That's all.
Do we know what we want to do with the language about being physically present that is in the current complaint form? Given what we heard about how the ordinance is phrased, and given a proposed alternative that I offered that maybe we haven't talked through enough.
I have a question on it. The conversation a few minutes ago was that the attestation required it. When I see the form, the attestation is at the bottom of what you see, and taking an oath to what you're reporting is true. But the requirement for presence is up above, not in the attestation. So right now, I see it as Scott said, if it's in the ordinance, we must deal with that. On the other hand, there's nothing that says that there can't be a more than one step for a form. And I'm especially thinking of when you file something online. In some places, it's not. I just went through the problem. W-9s. Some of them are accepted. Some places accept your electronic signature, and other places don't. You have to have a physical and take a picture of it, whatever. Because there is some gray area there, I would say that we may want to deal with it as a two-step, and maybe even create a classification precisely for the second type of hearing as this is a comment or this is a complaint. This is a first eyewitness complaint versus this is a comment on, as a secondary, a third person. Not all hearsay is not everything that is not in the presence is hearsay. Third person reports, even as a brief, are admitted in many situations. So.
Yeah, Carol.
I just want to come back to, because I want to make sure that I get the right, that I understand the direction that we're getting. In section 1928, it's the definition of complaints and then the filing of complaints. So this is all about complaints. And if you want to take in other kinds of information, you certainly can do that, and we can come up with some kind of mechanism for that. But in the attestation and so forth, because complaints have some, there's very specific things required from a complaint. And as we've been discussing, 1928D says firsthand account. That's been translated in the attestation with your input to say these allegations are true and correct to the best of my knowledge, and that they are based on my having been physically present at the location where and when the alleged the incident alleged herein occurred. That's for a complaint. So if I'm just wanting to stay focused on that language for a complaint, notwithstanding that we can create another mechanism if you want for people giving you a different kind of feedback. But because complaints have to be processed with certain timelines and in certain ways, that's why I'm just trying to make sure we get the complaint form in to be in alignment with the ordinance.
So just as a expediency, because we could spend a lot of time accumulating all these feelings, I think there is sufficient reason with the ordinance to say, for right now, that stays. So I'd like to move I'd like to recommend that we leave it for now until we figure out the other considerations, because there might be a mechanism that we can create offsite and still be with the ordinance. So I move that we leave that piece of physical presence there for now.
Second.
Can we move to approve the entire complaint form as it is currently written? And if we're not ready to do that, that's fine. seems like a more efficient process than to go bit by bit, and we're still going to have to approve the entire form.
I would be keen on that just because it breaks us out of the old form pattern. The bad thing is that it establishes version 3 of the form, and there'll be a version 4 and 5, and which form was needed. It creates a tracking problem as to which form and which requirement was met. But having gone through quite a number of last year's, there are columns that we can check off and say, were all the requirements of the form used at that date completed? And we can say that. So
I'm going to call a point of order here. We have a motion and a second on the floor. So can we move to discussion and vote on that?
I guess, thank you, Scott. I guess I'm offering a friendly amendment, Ricardo, to change the motion to approval of the complaint form in its entirety.
Can I ask a question?
Discussion.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Carol, and the filing location has been specified as the city clerk's office. Is that correct?
That's if somebody wants to physically bring it to the building.
Right.
They can also bring it to the HRO office, but that's on the second floor. They can mail it or email it also.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the very latest version of the report. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to figure out what the changes are. So.
And once we get through all of this, then we're going to, it's currently a fillable form, but we'll make it so that you can just basically, without having to scan it or anything, we'll have some way of doing I forget what they call that, but where you can do your electronic signature and then just submit it. So, but we haven't done that while it's still in flux. And one thing that, if it's helpful, we can add to the form when it was approved by CPRB.
Let's do that.
Yeah. I guess I'm with you, Mikhail, in that we might as well. We can always revisit, but at least we have a go-ahead and a solution to several of the requests that were put forward. There's a big one here that was voiced again today, but we're not saying big fat no. We're saying, given what we have today, let's go ahead. So, so let me change my motion, and then Scott, you can withdraw or not. I just move that we approve the form as is today, so we can start circulating and make those improvements.
I'll second that. I'm looking at it now. So.
Yeah, I read it earlier. So.
Can I just clarify that the one that you're looking at online does not have an additional sentence under how does the process work, that paper copies may be dropped off at the city clerk's office on the first floor of the city building. That's the additional sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was, I saw the back and forth on it, and I would agree that that's the one we're voting on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Chair.
Is there any further discussion? Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ricardo Diaz,
Yes.
Scott Dossett,
Yes.
Mikhail Lubinsky,
Yes.
Megan McGinty,
Yes.
Daryl Price,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes. Give me a moment to locate my agenda.
Can I ask while Mikhail is locating his agenda, Carol, is somebody at the city building working on getting those forms translated, or do we have a time as to when it'll become like a timeline for when it might become a form that can be done online?
I don't have a timeline yet, but that's on my to-do list is once we finalize the form to get it translated. So we will do that, and I can bring you a status update at the next meeting about what kind of length of time it might take.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our old business, unfinished business. We move to new business.
E.
That was for me, I think.
Yeah, that's a big one too, guys.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at an old agenda that didn't have E.
So it's a big one, but my recommendation, since this was something that we had proposed in the spirit of trying to be more efficient, and I think that it was premature on my part because I don't think we've shared enough with you all to understand even what is the nature of the complaints that we're talking about. So I think, somebody had mentioned early in the process about this dual vetting of complaints and with HRO and the CPRB. And I think that would be better for us to figure out, and we're working on that, about how to get you more involved in that. And then after we have a collective experience doing that, then it might be more clear that there's an alternative way of handling certain things. So I think we should get more experience with a collaborative process first, and then maybe revisit this subject. But I think it was premature, and that's my fault.
Well, it gets incorporated though, as we talk through what we saw in the previous complaint list. Scott, I think we have grounds to say, okay, let's learn some more before we make changes.
Okay, so I just want to clarify and make sure we're all on the same page. So until you bring this back to us, Carol, neither Rich Searles nor you nor other city staff will be making any kind of administrative determinations in terms of how to triage the complaints. They're all just going to go straight to, I guess, investigation.
Well, one thing that we've sort of kicked around is for things that we want guidance from the CPRB, because it's not straightforward, that we would acknowledge the complaint and say the investigation, the commencement of the investigation is pending consideration of whatever the issue is with the CPRB, so we bring it to you, and before we initiate the investigation, and we have a conversation about whatever it is about this particular complaint, we come to some agreement, and then the investigation can commence. And that will be communicated. I can't give you, I don't have a specific example, but basically that will be communicated to the complainant that we've received it. There's gonna be a discussion with CPRB about whatever it is, because we've heard loud and clear everything that goes on that form you want to see. So just because it's on the form, however, doesn't actually mean that it meets all the criteria. And so we will bring those to you, and then we'll have a conversation. And then once we all agree, then the investigation will commence.
And you will bring those to us in our monthly meetings?
Yes.
Or are we doing this in between the meetings?
No, I think we'll do it in the monthly meeting, okay. And we'll have to anonymize the complaint and stuff, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I'm comfortable with that, and happy to do it in an open meeting, and happy to then have public input about the decision rules that we wind up creating for ourselves.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, Scott.
Just a real quickie to remind us all that the ordinance doesn't talk anything about this kind of administrative review. So we're adding things that need to be looked at in the ordinance as we go down this path.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, give me 1 second. Again, I had the most recent agenda, and then somehow it got replaced with a less recent agenda. Okay, here's the most recent one. Okay, we are now done with unfinished business. And we now move to new business. Item A, report of preliminary audit of 2019 CPRB complaint log done by Ricardo and Scott. Gentlemen, will you present that to us?
Scott is at a disadvantage in that he sent me the compiling that he had done in 2019. But the short answer is it's in progress. It is not yet finished. We were missing some pieces of information in the cases. So there's some learning to have been done, or there's some learning on my part, and I think Scott can probably say on his, because we had an ample discussion as to what we were seeing. Basically, as a status report, 2019 had 12 complaints. 9 people made those complaints. In 2020, there are 13 pending complaints by 2 people. 8 total people have made complaints. We didn't get into the categorization yet. We'll come back to that. As I said, there are several gaps. They have been requested. We need to either, Carol and Vasilia are, well, Vasilia in this particular case is working on providing and filling those gaps in terms of which documents. It's hard to analyze a case and categorize it if we don't have all the info, basically. There's some action here that was requested and I think is fair. The numbering of every case. There were some cases that did not have it. 2020 is looking better on it, but there still needs to be one further look through from staff so that every submission, the log of cases is very thorough, but not yet the actual accounting of them. So we need to persist on getting that. Received the complaints and filing on our system changing is a question I had. Oh, because I knew that the form would be changing. So as we go to the next level of the form, it also means that we have to establish a good tracking so that in an audit, you want to be comparing apples to apples, and we are making changes that will apply to how we keep track of this. And I would suggest that we might as well at some point go back and pick up and see what was done before so that we have a consistent line to compare with.
Ricardo, you said that there, I can't remember the exact number, but a bunch of pending cases, which suggests that you're looking at the agenda item says 2019, but it sounds like you're also looking at 2020.
Well, because it requires it. Here we are in the 7th month, 8th month of the year almost. And so to be able to look at the categories of the information that we wanted to look at, it's good to create categories with as much information as possible.
Sure. So you're looking at 2019 and 2020.
Correct.
And all the pending cases, I assume, are from 2020.
Yes. It's kind of funny because we haven't talked about it recently. And Megan, Daryl, this has not been in our regular practice. We used to look, we might only consider a case that had been appealed after the chief had rendered his view. We have very few of those, but we always looked at the cases. Some of us had a regularity to see what complaints have been put forward. And they've been accessible through the portal for us, but we haven't done an accounting of those, and they are there accessible to you too. Sometimes it's interesting just to see, to get the pattern. In this case, I think there are several patterns that we will see hopefully next week. But I'd like to, well, Scott first, and then I have a recommendation that hasn't been run through Scott. So Scott, anything else that you saw as learning up to now?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of catch up that needs to be done, and I've already admonished us all about staff support, and I don't want to go too far down that but I do want to recognize that this there's a large effort involved in just getting these case files complete and understandable. In 2019, of the 12 cases that Ricardo notes, 9 of them contained no chief response letter. Okay, my anticipation after reviewing these for as long as I've been on the board is to see the complaint, to get a receipt of complaint so that we can track the days that we're into this system. The chief recognizes that this process has started, to be able to see investigative information reasonably redacted, and then to see basically the findings letter from the chief. In 8 out of the 13, we couldn't find a response letter. One out of the 12 actually lacked a narrative, so the complaint was submitted incomplete. 2 out of the 12 regarded ongoing criminal investigation. And on a positive note, 1 out of the 12 was mediated and withdrawn. And so that's what we have. In none of those 13 cases do we have this critical piece of the investigative report by the complaint. So that's your snapshot for 2019. So I presented a simple spreadsheet to Vasilia, and we have probably, if the spreadsheet had missings on 70% of it, it probably still has missings on 50% of it, because now we're going back into records from 2019 and kind of getting in the chief's business to try to get this stuff appended. And I don't really know how much work we want to spend on that, frankly. And I certainly wouldn't suggest that we go back to 2018. But I think we have to look at them more systematically in order to try to evaluate any kind of trends that we can in that, at least in the context of a couple of cogent categories, like, can we identify the officer? Can we identify the general category of the complaint? This goes back to this overarching kind of concern about how we serve the community in large in the context of how people are being treated by the police. So I think we're going to have to work with staff and be kind of careful about the sort of data we ask them for, because this progress could really get bogged down if we would go back to 18 to 17 to 16 to the last time an annual report was issued. My hope, once we get 19 as good as we can and going on into 20, of course, is that some kind of a matrix, a product from an Excel spreadsheet will be included in the annual report that we submit to the City Council and to the citizens. And it will include, not only some of the sort of auditing stuff that we have had, but more information about what the complaints were actually lodged about, and in a randomized way, who they were lodged against.
So you brought up something, Scott, that I think is highly relevant in the who. The question behind that is, do we have officers who have a long tail, lots of complaints? And that's as a regular resident, that is the question that I want to have, right? Before you do that, I think you pointed out there needs to be data, both collected, tracked, and held in a depository that is reliable, valid actually, that we know it's safe and it has everything. Talking about the doubtful attitude that somebody mentioned earlier. So we would have these, they would be done, collected, but compiled and then analyzed for us. So in that spirit, I think we have work to do still. Since we haven't seen a report from Visalia, we don't know where they're at in filling in the gaps that we talked about and that we referred to them. But we do have a great opportunity to ask real questions that get turned into work questions, and then cut them or add them, prioritize them. So let me give you an example of 2 questions that I had put forward for myself as internal and some that are public related. For example, right now the new form keeps on having the demographic questions. Who are you? What race are you? Whatever. And then there's a complaint. But I would argue that internally, the police probably is keeping track of location of where incidents are happening. That may be just privy to them, but probably they have it because it's good police work, and maybe some, a persistent area. The anecdotal, for example, was easy for me to learn from a police officer. Where do they go and spend most of their time? And arguably that could be also public info. But it is right and fair to say, even as we collect information as to are there problem officers, we would certainly want to say, and the officer's information is only good or is only relevant to be put out when there is something. So the form right now collects badge info. Who was it, right? So there is probably some tracking. But I would ask we members of the board and the public to add more questions. The training talks very well about the rules of the union apply to officers, to sworn officers. Shoot, how many officers do we have and how many of them are sworn? How many don't have a union protection? We don't have, at least right now for public consumption, how many times the police used force. And there's a spectrum of that. That's a relevant question for me as a resident. And while it may not be consolidated right now, I think that we have an opportunity to answer some basic questions that would shed light onto our police department. But we might glean things like what, Mikhail, you just said. The racial disparity is ever present. And while we should not ignore it, we have to look to what everybody else is doing on that. Whereas there's some questions that we could probably answer once we had the information in front of us. So that's my invitation. Why don't we put a list of questions that you would reasonably have, we prioritize them, and then see if this information is already being collected. If not, is it worth going through the work of collecting it? Because ultimately, the bridge between the community and the police is built with good information on both sides, being fair to what is reported and being fair to the fidelity of it. Is it good data? And can we then deduce good things from it? And I'm saying this from most recently a very hyperactive resident perspective versus a time in which I was really learning a lot about the police and I had no idea, which I think the public ought to also know, because being out there with a gun might give you ideas, but most of the time it's your target. So anyway, so that's why I'm inviting those questions, even though I know that we might not be able to deal with them. What else would you like to know is I'll volunteer to collect the questions and then later on process them to you guys. Too long, sorry.
Okay, so So thank you. That's a lot of information, and it sounds like we're pushing this until the next meeting for a more final update. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Scott and Ricardo? And I'll make time at the end for a second session of public input. So if you're still on the call and listening and watching to us, and you want to tell us what you think about anything, we'll do that today. Okay. Item B, review outstanding duties and reporting responsibilities of the board to be compliant with the CPRB ordinance. Carol, is this something that you want to talk about?
Well, I could introduce it and
Right.
share some information with you if you like. So as I think you all are aware, there's a May 28th memo that Elizabeth Hannon, who is the Human Resources and Finance Director and overseeing the HRO, made to the council about the status of various CPRB reports that are required to the city council. So there's a few of them that she reported on that were all delinquent at the time. So there's the annual report, and I know that is something that Elizabeth is working on right now. I don't have a projected date of completion. Another was the quarterly report on pending internal investigations. And that's another one that we don't think that report was ever made, so that we have to come up with a format for that. So that's still going to be a work in progress. We don't have that yet. Then there's copies of CPRB TASER display reports. And what Elizabeth had said was that this has been interpreted to mean that reports would be provided only if the CPRB took exception to an incidence of TASER usage. And to my knowledge, that hasn't happened. So those, that's just pending an incident that would trigger it. And then the last category of reports was evaluation of review of TASER displays. And that is the combined Scott Dossett, Deputy Chief Searles report that you all approved tonight that will go to the council sometime soon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and you have some council recommendations for us.
I thought I would. I anticipated based on the agenda for the council meeting on Monday, and it was all around the next steps discussion to the special public meeting, the special council meeting that was held about the future of policing and reimagining public safety in Urbana, and that conversation got carried over to the next council meeting, which will be the 27th, next Monday. So I thought I would have something specific to share with you all about that, because I think next steps about the CPRB ordinance and maybe the model of civilian oversight, all that was going to be discussed, and it just hasn't been yet. So I think that this will be something that we could carry over to a future agenda item for CPRB, because I think there's going to be a lot of follow-on conversation.
Okay, so I'll work with you on that, and I do want to come back to the petition that was brought to us with a list of there are some other changes to the CPRB that I want to bring to this body. So I guess just a heads up that you can expect that on the agenda for, if we have a bunch of appeals, maybe we'll not do that next week, but we'll do it at the next available opportunity.
if I might suggest, I think that part of what might come out of the council conversation is how to channel all of that and how to organize that, or how to engage more people, or how that's all going to move forward. So I think, you know, that will become more clear how that can advance.
When is council's continuation meeting?
It's just the next session, which is the 27th, next Monday.
Okay, so after Monday, I'll try to come to that meeting, but we'll check in about.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. That's it for new business. Are there announcements?
Yeah, whoa. I was trying to raise my hand.
Sorry, Scott. I was looking at the agenda.
Yeah, okay. The point B says outstanding duties and reporting responsibilities, and thanks for that list, Carol, because, you know, those are things we need to keep track of. And, you know, how we let this annual report slide so long, I just don't know. I feel like I must have fallen asleep for about 4 years. But the duty that I want to bring up here is section 1927, item number 1, because I want to keep on reminding us that the ordinance literally says that we will maintain a central registry of complaints. And I know that there's a lot of work being done on 19 and 20. We've got this idea of administrative triage and the co-triage. But I guess I want to grind my axe a little bit more about this, because I think this is probably at the heart of the intent and the utility of the ordinance in terms of some of these other issue-oriented things we've kind of been touching on today. In my mind, maintaining a central registry of complaints means that this board is responsible for every complaint introduced by a citizen, its logging, and its tracking through the system, and our individual work to understand the complaints and how they weigh on the citizens of Urbana, and how they reflect the operation of the police department. And so I know there are a lot of balls moving at the same time here, but I just really want to remind everybody that it's this board's responsibility to be able to collect the data, to analyze the data, synthesize the data, report the data, make it make sense to the people in Urbana in terms of these medium to long-term trends of action. And I don't want us to get too much into checking off annual reports and even the auditing of 2019 and 20 in terms of what's available in the portal and forget that. So that's all I had to say.
I think noted, Scott, but my question is the log not the depository? And actually, as we've been getting the notes of some people that said, I filed this complaint, because I've gone to look them up in the log. If they're in there, I'm satisfied that we have then a way to track them. So are you saying we're not carrying that out, or are you saying everybody please read all the complaints?
I'm saying that we're getting closer to doing that, but I don't believe we're there. And the statistics that I noted about 2019 should make that bluntly aware to all of us. We literally do not have, for 9 out of 12 cases, the response letters that went back to citizens after the complaint process was done. And we just have to do better. It's our responsibility to shake the tree until that happens. That's all.
Scott, when you say response letters, you mean findings letters?
Yes. Yes, letters of findings. Critical because back
Very
in
critical.
the day, pardon me?
Very critical.
Very critical, because back in the day, those response letters from the chief would say Officer XYZ was retrained. Officer XYZ was went through a contact session about procedures. There's a lot of real positive things that you can read if you pay attention to those.
And so the problem is that we're not clear right now. Are those findings letters missing because they just haven't been uploaded into the portal, or were they not written and sent? I'm hoping the former.
Well, we don't know yet. Staff is trying to come up with that. So Carol's got her hand up. Sorry, Carol.
Oh, that's fine. I just want to say, I don't know that you could draw a conclusion yet, because it's still, I think Scott is very on point, reminding us of that responsibility. It's an active work in progress on our part to identify those documents. I'm positive that in at least some of those cases, we have documents, they're just not all in the same place. And I hope that the case is that we can fill in every blank, and that we just, we have files in multiple places, but it's something we're committed to doing until we can tell you with certainty that we have everything in one place.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I got edits from staff on the 10th that filled in some of the highlighted areas, and I haven't double checked the portal on that, but it's more than just a record keeping function for me, because this is where we're gonna, I hope, eventually get a randomized officer ID procedure developed that's gonna go into this whole system. Ricardo mentioned some of the other demographic data that he was talking about, location. Those were all in these quarterly and annual reports that used to spool out of HRO that we could see. So I just really believe that that's a core function of us, is to run and organize that archive, and then to use it to be able to address the citizens of Urbana about whether we have complaints about traffic stops, whether we have complaints about noise, or whatever it is, tally, domestic situations and stuff like that. Very powerful tool, as long as we kind of insist that we and staff build a good one.
So just, I just ask that, let's get all the information consolidated in one place, and then we can start to make sure it's in a form that is useful to you, and it'll just continue to be a refinement process.
Yeah.
So Carol, what's a viable deadline to establish whether these findings letters and other documents, whether they exist and just haven't been uploaded, or whether they're just outstanding?
I'm going to have to talk to staff about it, because I haven't been in the weeds on exactly what's missing, the extent of what we don't have consolidated in one place. So I can find out and get a response for you at the next meeting, but I just can't answer that right now.
Okay. Please, let's do that, and we look forward to that update. Okay. Announcements. I know we have at least one. Yes, Carol.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to make an announcement about the status of open positions, or you would like me to do that.
I can do it. We had another person resign from the board, somebody who just joined, and so we're now once again a board of 5, and we are supposed to be a board of 7. So we have 2 open positions, and anybody who is interested in applying to be part of the board is welcome to contact any of us for more information. There's information for how to apply on the city website. Please do encourage, to the degree that you have that your own social networks reach the people that are most impacted by policing. Please do reach out to them and let them know that there are 2 vacancies, and we would be very glad to have them apply and be part of this body. Okay, and Carol, I know there's something else you wanted to add.
Yes. So I want to announce to you all that Vasilia Clark will be departing from the city of Urbana, and her last day with us will be a week from Friday, which is July 31st. And I hope you all will reach out to her privately if you'd like to wish her well, but we wish her well and thank her for her many years of service to the city of Urbana. And what we anticipate happening is that in filling the HRO position going forward, we are going to the City Council with a budget amendment on August 3rd to have that position converted to full-time. And we have a draft position description that we're working on right now, but you should know that the ultimate responsibility for the CPRB and making sure that all of your needs are met will be for the HRO. And there may be assistance provided from the community outreach coordinator, which is also, that's currently, we have several candidates who have made it through the first round. And there may be some assistance from that person, but the ultimate responsibility will be with the HRO. So if people are interested in that position, you'll be seeing it advertised soon. I can't say exactly when because we do have to go to council and then finalize the position description, but we hope to get as enthusiastic a response for that position as we did for the community outreach coordinator, because we had, I think, close to 100 applicants for that. So thank you.
I see that Tracy has her hand raised, and I did promise an opportunity for a second round of public comment. So let's move to that. And Tracy, you have the floor as soon as I can unmute you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to be as clear as I can because this is put together as pretty fast. So the first thing I want to say is I think there should be further discussion about the actual term that you use in the new form, the requirement for the physical presence, because this seems to be getting hung up on the interpretation of the word first-hand account and witness in the ordinance. I think it does need to be looked into further, especially since residents have followed up with even attorneys who have agreed that this particular requirement is in relation to hearsay. So, and like Ricardo said, not everything that is not witnessed firsthand is hearsay. So, for example, how about people who catch crime through security camera footage? How about police who get information from body camera footage? How about investigations that are conducted through body camera footage, security camera footage? I think it's wrong to just dismiss information that a witness can get through video footage. So I think such a decision should not be made lightly, especially just coming up with that requirement. I think it needs to be discussed further. It was also disappointing to hear that one of the reasons that I think it was Mr. Dossett said for not allowing someone to witness, for not allowing someone who witnessed a wrongdoing via video, and the example he gave was the amount of complaints that would have resulted from the Aaliyah Lewis incident. I think that's kind of disappointing to make such a decision based on how much work that has to be done. If the issue is bad enough that so many people are going to submit a complaint, I think it's a valid thing to investigate the complaint, like no matter how much work it takes. The third thing is about Ricardo's comments about information about Urbana police officers. That's good to know. For example, how many UPD staff are sworn officers, how many of them are unionized. Yes, the public, we do think that all this information is useful, and we are trying to get that information through FOIA requests. For example, I requested a list of police officers, their badge numbers. People are trying to get use of force reports, but it's hard to get that information. This is what I'm being charged for. This is what, these are the hurdles that civilians have to jump through to get such information. So I don't know if, I just want to say that we do think that such information is useful, but it's really difficult to get. And the last thing is that I'm not sure if I heard it correctly, but I think Mr. Dossett said that there was no investigative report given when you are trying to compile the stats. I think that the investigative report is one of the most critical things to look at, especially since the complainant has a really hard time getting hold of this document. And when they do get it, it's usually heavily redacted. So, I mean, what's the reason why the police department is trying to withhold this document? I think CPRB needs to push on this issue and make sure that you have the investigative report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Christopher and then Jane.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Again, Christopher Hansen from Urbana. I really want to say how important a gesture, I guess it is, from a public board to offer a second set of public input. I had an hour and a half meeting today with Mayor Marlin, and one of the things we discussed that was important to me is the way that the public is received when they go to speak to public bodies like the City Council. And I think the history that we've seen with public bodies, not just in Urbana, but also in Champaign and Champaign County, when people approach them, I think is not good. And what has been done at this meeting with Mikhail, restating some of what the public has said and also offering a second session, I think really helps kind of bridge this giant rift that's been coming up between many members of the public and the City Council, and perhaps with the CPRB. So I have a few comments about today's meeting, and one of them is kind of about the interplay between the efficacy of the CPRB and community outreach. And your board has mentioned community outreach several times, even a year ago and before that. And I really feel that you guys are kind of putting the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, rather. And I don't think that your complaint process has any significant level of trust with the community. I don't think it's time for the CPRB to kind of go advertise its services, if you will. Now, you also would want to get more input from the community about what the board should look like. But I think you have a lot of that, and I know you don't have it from a super diverse group of people, but I think you're really going to struggle to get a significant investment from the community before you've made it clear that you can help them. I think that's really, really going to be hard. And so I think what you need to do is try to take some steps to make it clear that your process is worth an investment of time, and then kind of do some more of that community outreach, and maybe people will find that it's worth it. And I mean, I was also listening closely when Ricardo talked about the distinguishing citizens versus residents or civilians, and I'm with you, Ricardo, and I want to tell the board, last year I had a discussion with a close friend about them going through the complaint and appeals process, and one of their one of their major concerns about doing it was their immigration status, and if they would want to put themselves in a position where they could be scrutinized. And the answer was it was no, it's not worth it. There's nothing to be gained by going through the complaint process and making yourself a target, perhaps. So that is a problem. And again, it has to do with your efficacy as a board. You guys talked about TASER reviews some, and I wanted to mention some things about that. First of all, it's been repeated over and over that the TASER reviews you've seen, you haven't found misconduct. And I want the board to always keep in mind that maybe you haven't found misconduct because you're reviewing those, and because every time an officer takes their TASER out, they know it's going to be reviewed by a civilian review board. So don't forget that. And another thing, when you guys talk about TASERs, and I personally find this very, very upsetting, is to act like having a TASER gun or any kind of gun or weapon pointed at a person isn't in itself a very, very serious situation. I don't know if any of you have had a TASER gun or a real gun pointed at you by a police officer, but I have, and it's not good. We should avoid that situation whenever we can. So, and if a private citizen did that could be a felony, just to brandish a weapon like that. So we shouldn't take it lightly when police officers do it and pretend that just pointing a gun at someone is no harm done. So, concerning the video witness issue, I'm a little confused here because Mr. Dossett at the beginning of the meeting kind of said he wasn't one for legal definitions, but then later went on to tell us that about the definition of witness. And every effort I've made to research this indicates that someone who has looked at video can, in a legal trial, be a witness. And the public seems to want that anyone should be able to issue a complaint. So I don't know why the board is going in the other direction. And as far as I agree with Tracy on the Lewis complaint volume issue. I mean, let's look at it this way. The CPRB had no initial jurisdiction to look at the Lewis arrest incident, but did that really save you the time, or did it save the city the time? No. Once you have that many people upset about a situation, it's going to consume everyone's time no matter what. So you might as well embrace it and allow something like that into the complaint process. And I'll remind the CPRB, it is the policy of the Urbana Police Department to investigate all complaints. So we're already in the position where these restrictions are not put upon the police department. The restrictions are only put upon the CPRB. So I just don't quite get it. And I guess just a few technical notes, and I'll try to wrap it up. I did mention to the board a few months ago that if you guys cannot schedule an appeals hearing within 45 days, it does say in the ordinance that you need to respond to the complainant and tell them why. And I think we all know the answer to that, but I just think, just trying to keep in step with the ordinance, maybe that should be something that should be done. And I also want to remind again that right now there are many complaints that are still being denied just because Carol Mitten is kind of labeling them as administrative, and they're being denied and they're not being assigned complaint numbers. And I don't think, or I don't know if the CPRB is seeing them, but there is no allowance for this in the ordinance. There's no, and Mr. Dossett has said this, there's no indication that there's some administrative veto step that city staff have, and that's what is happening. And if the complaints that are being called administrative are ones that are arguing that the CPRB ordinance is being violated, those might be the most important complaints you could ever receive. So you shouldn't take them lightly. So, and the very last thing I'll say is I think you should completely do away with this notion of randomized officer ID. These are public servants serving the residents of Urbana and people who aren't residents of Urbana, and they're serving in a public capacity in public spaces. Let's not be pedantic and assign random IDs. We can use their names. It's just, I think it's silly to add this kind of extra step. It just makes the conversation more difficult. But, anyways, thanks for letting me speak for that amount of time.
Thanks, Chris. 1 second. I know there's somebody who's got their hand up. Jane, did you want to speak? She was here, she had her hand up. Now I don't see her. Emily Close.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Emily.
Hi. You have to be very careful about putting more obstacles in the path of citizens who might want to file complaints. It is not an easy thing to do. Notarize, don't notarize, charge large fees for FOIA. In my experience is that staff can be downright unfriendly or rude when you're trying to get information. I think if you would stop blocking access to the complaint process and let people file complaints, then you wouldn't have to be asking at your meetings like you did tonight that you want to get in contact with the people that really would be, more likely to file complaints. I get that you think someone like me is a voluminous and frequent speaker and complainer, but I've had experience going through the process in Champaign, and I've had experience trying to get basic information about your process in Urbana, and it's not fun. It's not a welcoming process. Nobody wants you to file a complaint. So I think we have to look at that in a clear-eyed way and try to find out somehow of really contacting people who have legitimate complaints, but just don't feel comfortable with the process. It's intimidating. It takes guts to actually file a complaint and then to take it through the appeals process. And I think you can talk about it at these meetings in a very kind of detached and intellectual way, but I don't think that's really accomplishing the goal of what I see as this board, and that is to make contact with people who have the grievances against sworn police officers so that they can be a part, so they can actually participate in the process and have like a meaningful conversation with, the board or with city staff and with the police. Otherwise, I don't think anything is ever going to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Okay. I think that's everybody. And I think we have reached the end of our agenda. So is there a move to adjourn?
I'd like to move that, but before that, just acknowledge, thank you for the comments. I probably agreed with 95% of these final comments, so thank you. I move that we end this meeting.
You're still muted, Daryl.
Been a while. I second the motion.
Okay. I think, unfortunately, we need a vote.
Ricardo Diaz,
Yes, please.
Scott Dossett,
Yes.
Mikhail Levinsky,
Yes.
Megan McGinty,
Yes.
Daryl Price.
Yes.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.